This is the Revved Up Sports Show with Bobby Chaffee.
We do have this nice little format that we try to follow every week. We don't usually follow it.
And Rodney Rodriguez.
Entertain me. Tell me something. I need to know something other than what I'm seeing.
Y'all ready? Here we go. Here's Bobby and Rodney.
It is Monday once again. Welcome in, Revved Up Nation, as we get set for hashtag Real Race Talk. Showtime, Bobby Chaffee, Rodney Rodriguez. Great show coming up. Terry Barton's going to join us at 6:45. Gabe Brown, the big winner at Oxford yesterday, is going to check in with us a little bit later on, about 7:25, up from the northern parts of the country as we roll into another another full week of we are in the mainstream top part of the year. And Bobby, I got to tell you, man, this heat is stupid. It is way too damn hot. I know with Waco canceling their race, and obviously big thoughts there to big Mike McCarthy. His dad, John, passes away, so obviously we're thinking about Big Mike. So it was kind of a dual thing right there. But it is hot. It is very, very hot. You were at Texana this past weekend, and it's I will say, at times it's way too hot to be doing this shit.
It was incredibly hot. I was really, really surprised at exactly how hot it was. But it definitely took its toll. I tried to pregame with a lot of water, although it didn't necessarily work as much as I thought it was going to, the pregame portion of it. But it was definitely a way outweighs there, especially with the only saving grace I think at Edna that I had was that at least there was a constant breeze. We needed to put one more round of water on the racetrack just to for extra one little round because it's going to go pretty fast. The track was pretty dry, pretty slick, definitely dry slick. So it was one of those things where the track was so dry that you could hear the
tires squealing.
Hear the mod squeal the tires there when they were getting on it. So
that's where it gets really hard with that because it's with dirt track racing. I mean, obviously the track prep and everything that is so important. I mean, we all know that, and you know that's where we go back to when people are going to bitch at the promoter about whatever may be happening right there. You got to realize at some point, and I do wonder when it comes to dirt track racing, is if at some point because we've got the grid people telling us. I mean, we've got ERCOT telling us not to, to conserve power and all this. At some point, if people put the brakes on, and I'm not trying to ruin everybody's party right here, but if at some point people tell us we got to conserve water and you can't be digging out all these portals of water, I mean, what happens then? I mean, that's the stupid shit that I think about, late at night. I'm like, oh, what happens then? I mean, it's going to be pretty tough. It's going to be tough, but it is very hot. You guys and ladies, I mean, I know a lot of folks that watch the show and that are a part of Revved Up Nation. You've got regular jobs. I mean, you're out there working your ass off. Man, you got to be smart about this thing. And like Bobby talking about hydrating and all of that. I mean, it's like days before. It's days before I resort back to my competitive running days when it was like, okay, you don't just have to like hydrate the day of the race. I mean, it starts like 3 or 4 days ahead, and you guys got to do that too. Even when you dehydrate yourself every night, like we all do.
Well, it was definitely a challenge when you wanted to have like a nice ice cold Coke. And you just couldn't have one because you're like, well, let me drink water instead for every meal leading up a couple of days forward because I knew it was going to be hot. But like we talked about on Saturday at Tyler's deal, when you get to that point where you cook, it's just like smoking meat, where you get to the certain point where you start cooking and you don't raise any more heat. So you just kind of stay at that one temperature. So I think I hit that when it's about 107. Man,
that's crazy. It's hot. It's very hot. It is a humid heat and all of that. So everybody be weather aware and take care of yourself. And by all means, if you see somebody that's kind of struggling there a little bit with the weather thing, I mean, give them a hand, give them a cool towel, give them something that's going to help them. I'm super excited this weekend. I'm supposed to be in Mobile this weekend. Honestly, I don't want to be that guy, but I don't think I'm going to be because I've seen that. We got a depression coming in. It's going to be along the Gulf Coast. I don't see how that show's going to work out. I hope I'm wrong because I love going down there. But I'm very excited that at Arklatex Speedway, you've got the Mike Parker Memorial. That's coming up. It's 3 days of racing. You can catch it on on Race on Texas. You got $5K to win for the factory stocks, 5K to win for the limited modifieds. That's a Justin Whitehead thing right there. And that right there, that is a badass show right there. And when we talk about Arklatex, I mean, just the name of the speedway, you're bringing in all the big hitters from 3 states. That's going to be massive.
It'll be a great race. I'm looking forward to seeing it with our media partners there at Race on Texas. And, think about it. You got a couple of big races back to back. The next weekend after that is going to be the big race at Boot Hill.
That's right. That's right. So you got
is that bad putting both those big races back to back like that, especially if your heavy hitters get not DQ'd, but if they get to the tech barn and they get tore up or they get torn down, is that a bad thing with those 2 big races back to back?
I think the good thing is if you get thrown out, it's one thing, because if you get thrown out, then it's just a matter of, okay, put it back together. Or if you get thrown out, if you throw yourself out and it's like, oh man, they're checking what? And that happens.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, I've been in those shoes where it's like, oh man, we're a little close right there. So, I mean, I don't think so, Bobby, because we're going to see a boatload of people doing both of those shows, and it just goes to prove how successful those big races are, because they're both going to do well, and I mean, good for them. And we got to give some love. You were at Texana. That sounded like a very eventful night.
Yeah.
On and off the track, for crying out loud.
Yeah, it was. Definitely had some logistical issues there at a tower that made intermission last a little longer than what we wanted it to. But all in all, good. For the heat, I think the crowd was okay for as hot as it was. But as always, you can always use a little bit more car count every track you go to. So I wish I'd have seen a few more cars in a couple of classes, but the racing was fairly decent.
Yeah,
all the way around that night. So whatever. It's racing. It's cyclical. So we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Looked like a good night at I-37. You had the late models in town, and Ray Doyon wins there. The modifieds there was Stephen Whitaker as he wins with that. Jared once again in the factory stocks, and I mean Jared followed by Johnny Torres with a really good run from Johnny Torres as he chased himself. I think he started 12th or 13th, found his way to the runner-up spot, and just a great run for him. But again, that's good momentum for 37. But man, that I mean, we think about it here in Texas. It's between Pleasanton and Edna. It's a long ass way, but we're used to driving. But man, I'm sorry, that's detrimental. I mean, because Texana, and I hate it for Texana. The car count is just not what it was, and it's tough to see that, because that place was on such an upswing, and not that it's anything's happening there,
yeah.
But man, I hate seeing that. I hate seeing that place not with the car count that it had and the momentum that it had at one point.
Well, you lose at $5 a gallon for diesel. You lose a lot of the traveling racers.
That's right.
That's been the heat is one thing. I think the heat deters the local fans a little bit because it's so hot. But I think what it is that Victoria is just not as much of a racing town to produce as much racers as you need to actually come down and make an impact on the attendance at the races. And then obviously you take away 105's getting their act together, so you don't have some of the Houston cars coming anymore. Corpus with the race ranch, you don't have some of the Corpus cars coming now, so there's there's only so many race cars that go around. You don't get the Cotton Bowl guys that travel a whole lot because they don't have to. They got a really good program running up there at Cotton Bowl, and so that becomes the challenge. I just think all in all, I don't want to see Texana get left out in the mix because it's a great facility.
Yeah.
And they're all actually really good facilities and really good racing. I-37, the race ranch, Texana. Cotton Bowl, they're all fine racing facilities. You hate to see one of them get left out in the dirt. Yeah, that is the rough part, to where it does seem like Texana has gotten left out a little bit. And but the thing is, with the success, like with 37 this past week, it looked jam packed. From everything that I saw there on Race on Texas, you had grandstands that were packed. People wanting to see all those races, the late models. That makes a huge difference. You've got it's so hard because you've got the benchmark tracks. You've got Devil's Bowl, you've got Kennedale, you've got Waco. You've got those tracks, but those are up north.
And when we look at the south part, when we look at the southern part, that's where there are so many that are all jam packed in here right now, and they're like fighting for dates, and they're racing on top of each other. And like for Cotton Bowl, really is the best example about what you're talking about, because they've got their people that they're going to run there. It doesn't matter what the hell's happening. I mean, I think you could have a $10,000 to win, factory stock race, but all of those factory stocks that race at CBS, they're going to show up because they're loyal. And that's great. I mean, that's a good thing. I mean, that's admirable. I love that.
Well, we've seen it time and time again, and a lot of it's the same guys that were loyal there at the
Thunderhill.
At Thunderhill,
yeah,
that's good. I mean, and it took a while for H and Marianne to get those racers to buy into their program. You and I both have announced there at Cotton Bowl and seen the evolution of that track, seen the evolution of their entire racing program up there from when they first started till now. And it's not the same show that it once was. It's moving along a little faster. The racing seems to not move like an asphalt show, because that's what you're used to. You and I both know from experience, you have to change the way that we announce, because the show is different on a dirt track versus how you announce there on an asphalt track. So the way that the shows are running, I think that the Cotton Bowl's done a good job transitioning from the asphalt type of deal going to the dirt, more of a dirt style way. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't mean in a bad way to Cotton Bowl. I want people to tell me to get the instant messages and the text that I talk bad about Cotton Bowl, but it's a good evolution that they've had to the program they have now.
Yeah. And speaking of asphalt, and Terry Barden coming up here in just a couple of minutes, but I do want to touch on something, because it has been a topic of conversation with the Houston thing. I mean, obviously with that coming up again, and with Gulf Coast not moving forward with all of that, and the back and forth and everything. I know that is I mean, that really is a bad conversation to be had. And honestly, guys, I mean, it comes down to be able to sustain that business model. I mean, and we'll talk to Terry here in just a minute. I mean, to be able to do that, it is so hard to make that profitable. I mean, for all parties involved. And that's really what you want when you have that situation. And we've talked about it. I mean, the best racetracks, the most successful, sustainable racetracks are in situations where they're not being leased. And I mean, I know that I say that a lot, and somebody messaged me the other day and they're like, "Hey, smart ass. I mean, it's hard to own a racetrack." And I'm like, "Yeah, you trust me. I know. I hear the stories, but I mean, I'm sorry. That's just the bottom line. It is hard to make that model work.
It's very hard to make that model work. And anybody that decides that they think they can do it better, more than welcome to contact Dean Baker and try to make something happen.
Absolutely. And there's no shade cast at him. I mean, he's doing what he has to do. I mean, he does a great job. That drag race facility does exceptional, and they continue to do that, and they will continue to do that. And if the asphalt thing, if the oval works out, that's great. But anyway, let's go to the Lone Star Speed Zone hotline that is powered by Computer Age Automotive right here in Cedar Park, just a little over that way to me. And we're excited jumping on. We've got another member of the Texas Legends, and this is a guy that's seen it from every point, every aspect. And I'm going to be curious to get his thoughts on what he thinks about it now. It is my good friend, your good friend, Mr. Terry Barden. Terry, how we doing, buddy?
Hey, Rodney, doing real good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, Terry. Thanks for taking the time. Happy belated birthday. That's actually how I had the idea. So I'm like, boom, there it is.
Thank you.
So Terry, talk about it, because I mean, so many folks, some of the newcomers that were newer to the racing scene, they know you as track operator, race director, doing all this stuff. But I watched you race, and I watched you take checkered flags and some pretty hard hits over at the old San Antonio racetrack right there. Talk about your start into this mess.
Well, I mean, we can go back a long, long way. 1963, I went to my first race at, I was, 6, 7 years old. And my dad was a drag racer, but then we went to a roundy round race and I was hooked. My idea after that was, I watch these guys go straight. Well, be impressive, turn it around and come back at the same speed. And then I'd be impressed. But, that's how I got started. And then at that young age, and I was hooked ever since. I heard y'all talking about the deal in Houston and everything. And, unfortunately, I'm old enough to have been to almost asphalt track in Texas, and seen the same thing happen. And you know, just my personal opinion about it is, you guys that are in the radio, and you guys that do what y'all do, y'all are the biggest supporters we have. But asphalt track racing never got the attention of the big media people. And you know, to me, that has been part of the big downfall of it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So Terry,
I'll be very honest. I you know, when I was working for San Antonio Speedway, and I was the race director when Frank Howe had it, I had a meeting with Mike Hegg and their sports editor at the time. I believe he was writing for The Light at the time.
Yeah.
And we had a big meeting, and him and I and Mike, we discussed it. Mike wanted to start doing a big deal, once a week big deal, on covering San Antonio Speedway, covering Longhorn at the time, covering the local tracks that we had. And I sat there for 3 hours explaining to the guy and trying to explain the deal that the Snowball Derby has. Yeah. How on the East Coast and down south, Mobile and all of them, the big crowds that they bring in, because they get a lot of attention down there. We never got that attention. And when it was all said and done, the guy basically told me, well, we'll see what we can do. And that's the last I ever heard from the guy.
That sucks.
Terry, why is there that disconnect? Why has it always been that disconnect between the local media and the local racetracks?
That's a very good question. You know, I can remember back, to be honest with you, in the 60s and the 70s, when they built Pan American Speedway on Topperwine, when they moved from Austin Highway to Topperwine, there was nothing ever written up about it except for the bad press. And I hate to say it, because he turned out to be a pretty good, I won't say a friend of mine, but an acquaintance of mine, but Dan Cook, who was the most popular guy out there in sports and everything, his columns that he wrote back in the day were nothing but negative about the lawsuits that were happening over it, about the conflict between what the old Pan American was, which turned into Mercury Speedway, and the new place, and the controversy about the drivers splitting up and going. And then the same thing happened when Don Beerswald built San Antonio. It was nothing but the negativity between the two. It wasn't what the half mile is going to bring to San Antonio, which it eventually did. It brought some of the biggest races this town has ever seen. I'd say besides maybe the Grand Prix downtown.
Sure.
But, you know, with the all-pro races, Rodney, I'm sure you were there for the all-pro races. You know, the biggest names in stock car racing were here. And never got anything except the advertisement out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know what you know, I mean, we are a big, and I always call it a ball and stick town. You know, I don't know if it's hard to explain, and I don't understand why the media never jumped on with us.
Yeah.
When, of course, we had media people like Ricky Ware, that was the biggest name in San Antonio on the radio at the time. But outside of that, nothing.
Yeah. And Terry, I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of I wanted to bring Ricky and Ricky Jr. and Trey and all of them up, because I mean, to me in Austin, Austin struggled with that. I mean, now luckily we've gotten a little bit of run, you know, with Coda, and just like with Bobby and our the show that we do on Saturdays. But at one point, Austin really jumped on to supporting Speedorama. But I mean, it really was there with, it seemed like, you know, Ricky did a good job. I mean, he had the KTSA car. I mean, you had all of that. I mean, that was back in those days. But I just, for the life of me, cannot figure out why the country station, you know, KJ97, I mean, Y100 back in those 80s, why they couldn't clamor onto this. I mean, to me, it is a damn shame that we don't have an asphalt racing track in San Antonio happening right now.
Well, I'll tell you, you talked about KJ, you talked about the Y100, even I'm trying to think of the two brothers that were with the sports station here in town.
Yeah.
Oh man, one of them still on the ESPN station. Anyway, we had all of them out there at the racetrack. Trey pumped it up big time, and Randy Carroll did a little bit. We had them all out there in a celebrity race.
That's right.
And they would talk about it up until that Saturday, and after that Saturday, Monday they had a little bit. Man, well, we had a good time. We got to drive these cars. That was it.
That's right.
That was the end of it. And I can't explain it. I've said in meeting after meetings after meetings, Bobby, you know, when we were doing Romco, the meetings that we had with everybody that we could come up with, there just was no, you know, you could talk to them till you're blue in the face, and then when it's all said and done, it's like, you know, you couldn't even get them to come out.
Yeah.
The one person,
rough, yeah.
The one person back in the day, the one person that really did a lot for us, believe it or not, was Mayor Peak.
Huh.
He was a big car nut. And he would come to the races constantly. And he would come to us and he would tell us, what can we do to help promote this thing a little bit? And the Howells and me would sit down with the mayor and we would talk to him. And the next week he would come out and said, you know, I've talked to people. I've talked to the council. And he said, I might as well be talking to the wall. He said, if it doesn't have anything to do, and his words were, and where I got it from, it doesn't have anything with a basketball or a baseball bat, we don't want to talk about it.
Oh, it sucks.
I know. We used to get a better run with the mentality. We get a better run with the Corpus media back in the Romco USRA days than we ever got with anybody from San Antonio. And I never understood that because the media days, like you said, the media days were packed. We had all the stations there with their cameras and they were getting the promo shots. They were talking to you, talking to me, talking to Terry. And it just seemed like everything was going fine. And then when it came race day, nobody was there. Nobody showed up. They didn't even send out a video to take highlights.
The only media people there would be Mike Haig and Nick Holt.
Yeah.
And they were writing their little articles. And Joanne and Pete Peters back in the day, because they wrote their little articles for the racing scene, the one that
Rat Tracks.
I can't even think of his name. Yeah, there you go. They were there. And outside of that, and I can tell you, I know how many tickets, I know how much hard work that the Oates, the Howells, Cindy Oates at the time, they did to try to promote San Antonio, and just couldn't get the people there. Like Bobby said, when we first started Romco, I'll give you one better than that. When Frank Howell went NASCAR, we had a big press conference downtown and had all the media people there that, hey, we are bringing a NASCAR sanctioned track. We are going NASCAR sanctioned. We had a big deal downtown, fed them, the whole thing. It made one TV show, one TV station that night. It didn't make the other two, or you say the other three, because 29 was in there then.
Yep.
But yeah, KAVB back then, and it didn't make that one. So, you know, I honestly and truly, it's hard to sit down with people and find out what the problem is. None of them have an answer.
Yeah.
You've got such a big market here, and back in the day, you know, when I raced at San Antonio, knock on wood, and in the class that I was in, we had 32, 34 cars. It wasn't a car count problem. You know, we had cars there every weekend that was, and the pits were packed.
Yeah.
It was just, unless you wanted to buy a sponsorship on a radio station, nobody wanted to talk to you.
Yeah, and that's right. So Terry, talk about that, because I really think with San Antonio, because you were in the super stocks or late model stocks, whatever they were at that point, and my dad was in the street stock or whatever they called them at that point. And you guys, you had that car count, and his class would have, 25 to 30 cars, and you had the Austin guys that came over, and if Corpus was off, the San Antonio guys would come up. And I really think that that's where the San Antonio mainstream everything, that's where they screwed the pooch right there, because that would have been the time to pounce on this thing, and you still had what they call the I think at that point the late models were the Super Series or whatever the hell they called them, and you had Farmer and Palace and Greg Davidson and all these guys. You had a pit full of cars. That infield was full. The racing was amazing. You had the Bombers. You had all of that, and they totally missed the boat right there, where they could have put San Antonio up over the dadgum moon when it came to a racing town.
Oh, I totally agree with you. And then, you're right. When I raced out there, the pits were full. We only ran three or four classes of cars, but we put on a great show. The drivers loved that race. I remember when All Pro came in there.
Oh man!
And All Pro, there was Joe Nemechek, Bobby and Davey Allison both were here. I could go on and on, that were here. And when they unloaded those race cars out there, all you heard was springs being changed. You heard impacts going off, going crazy. And, I walked around and I said, and I was talking to Dick Anderson, which turned out to be a really good friend of mine. When I was racing with Waldo Harper, we bought 2 cars from him. And he said, man, when I walked in this racetrack, he said, this is nothing like anything I've ever seen. He said, this is going to be the best track and the most fun that we've ever raced on. He said, but the setups we brought is not going to work. And so they all had to change the setups. And I mean, San Antonio, when it was first built and when I first raced on it, when you had I think it was 17 degrees in the corner.
Yep. But
when you came off of the turn,
flat,
it went back 2 degrees towards the fence.
Yep.
The racetrack was actually 2 degrees negative going back towards the fence, and it was a lot of fun.
And the wall went with it, Terry. The wall went with it.
The wall went with it. And to race at San Antonio Speedway, I had when we had Michael Waltrip, Terry Labonte, and those NASCAR guys that came out there and ran the Race of Champions with us.
Yeah. They
said Michael Waltrip, he told me when it was all said and done, he said, that is the most fun I ever had on a short track. He said, that racetrack is ungodly fast, but he says, you better have something to make the car turn when you get down to the end of it.
Yeah.
He said, because he said, it's so unique. And why that track, why it didn't get the recognition it should have, I'll never know.
Yeah.
I'll never know. Yeah. And you were right. With the car counts we had, with the guys coming from Austin, Corpus, Houston, everywhere to race on this racetrack, I never understood it, and to this day it baffles me.
Yeah, it sucks. Terry, talk about that, and then we'll go to the later days, and then the race directing days, and all of that. But and then we'll probably ask you about the track that does San Antonio that never forgave, because I know you took some hits there, just as I did. But that's why we resorted to doing other things. But so Terry, I think one of the coolest parts for me was with All Pro. When they would come in, I mean, they brought everybody that you talked about. I mean, Darrell Brown won there. I mean, Donnie Allison. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Mike Harmon, these guys. But when they came to town, they had Rapper was going to be good. Yeomans was going to be good. I mean, all of our guys, they were running at the top of the pack right there when it came to All Pro coming to town to San Antonio.
Yeah, and the year after I got hurt in 87. 88, they brought All Pro in. First year Frank Howell had it. He brought All Pro in, and I was lucky enough to be working on Hubert Bean's car at the time.
Nice.
And we sat on the pole for that race. We sat on the pole against Nemechek, against Darrell Brown, against all of the guys that were there. I mean, it was unbelievable. And I tell you one thing, when those guys came to town, they ran on part of that asphalt that nobody ever ran on. I mean, they found new parts of that asphalt that most of us were scared to.
So, Terry, we've asked everybody that's running San Antonio Speedway, what's the fastest way around that joint? Because everybody that was fast has a completely different line about how they got around that place. What was your line of choice?
I think it was, and I go all the way back to it, Waldo Harper, who taught me a lot about what I know about racing now. He told me that racetrack, he said, if you could go down and you can clip the grass going in, and set the car and clip the grass coming out, you'll be fast. You had to diamond the racetrack. You had to go in as low as you could on the entrance of one, go up to the middle of the turn, and cut it back down. If you had a car that would do that, you were going to be fast at that racetrack. And that was, we called it the diamond pattern.
That's right.
So that's basically, the thing about the racetrack, before we had to repave it when Frank got it back, when it had that negative coming off the straightaway and it had that negative banking, it threw you to the fence. I mean, when you come off of it, you were going to the fence.
Yeah.
And if you were afraid of the fence, you weren't going to be fast around there. I always told that racetrack, we gave it the nickname the start over track, because you went down in there and you crashed going into one. You started over with a new car.
You got that shit right.
I mean, that damn place, like you called it, unforgiving. You were going down the straightaway so fast that if something screwed up going in, you were in a world of hurt.
Yeah.
I know.
Terry, talk about that. I mean, because I'm looking at pictures in the studio. I've got pictures of the cars that I raced over the years, and I've got one that got destroyed over there. Two of them, as a matter of fact. But I mean, talk about yours. I mean, I know we all had accidents, but man, the one for you, I mean, when you talked about getting hurt, I mean, that was San Antonio. That place would hurt you if something happened. It was, she was a bitch. She was a bitch. There's no other way to put it.
She was a pure bitch. I mean, she was, like you said, she was unforgiving. At the start of the year, I had a brand new car, and it was ironic that what I'm going to tell you the last part of this. First night out with it, going down the front straightaway, I started dead. I always like to start last. I don't know why. Even if I was up front, I wanted to start in the back because I wanted to pass cars. That's just what I wanted to do. If I ran second, that was fine, but I wanted to pass cars. Well, I started dead last, and going down the front straightaway, I would lag back. I learned that from Waldo Harper. I would lag back, being in the back, and I would anticipate them throwing the green. And back then, you didn't have to wait till you got to the start line to pass. When the green flag dropped, the bullshit stopped.
Boom.
And you went to the front. Well, that's what I did. But when I went down into turn one and took my foot off the gas stayed on the floor. And and I was dodging cars, and I'll never forget it. And you probably know who I'm going to talk about. His name's Harold Oatman.
Oh yeah.
Harold helped me build that car. And Harold told a buddy of mine that was in the pits, he said either he's got a lot of confidence in that car or the throttle's hung because of the way I was passing cars. Anyway, I hit this car. The car went straight up in the air. I came down on the right rear, and it was still running. I finally got it shut off and tore the car up. Anyway, the night that I got hurt, I was going down the backstretch, and we just redid the whole car getting ready for the Texas Classic. If you'll remember that race back then.
That was a race.
We were getting ready for it, and and that was a heck of a race back then. And we had the car. I took like 5 weeks off, and I did a whole lot of changes to the car. We got out to the racetrack. I started back because we had to start by point average, and so your point average, I was in the rear. I won the fast heat. Everybody told me, let's put the car on the trailer. I said, no, I'm going to make some money for tire money for that Classic. I went out there, and I wasn't racing, and that's one mistake, Rodney. I can tell everybody out there that drives a race car. If you go out there and your heart's not in it to try to win that race and race as hard as you can, you don't need to be in the race car. That's what I did. I wasn't out there trying to really super race that car hard. I knew it was fast. And the same guy that I ran over the first night blew an engine going down the back stretch.
Mm.
And he come down. This is what they told me. He came down on me. We both got in the grass. And back then, Rodney, if you'll remember, they had those big Uke tires.
That's right.
Around the light poles.
That's right.
Well, I hit the one going into turn 3 on the left front of the car.
Oh.
It shoved the tire back into the firewall.
Mm.
And I had my swing down pedals, and I had my foot on the brake. And if you could imagine, my left foot
disintegrated.
The brake pedal turned around backwards.
Oh,
I was on it so hard when I hit that fence. It was aluminum, and it just twisted around to where the brake pedal was facing the firewall, and my left foot was caught between it and the firewall, and it broke my left leg. It was a compound fracture, and I still carry a plate in the outside part of my leg with 5 screws in it to hold it together. And I lost 25% of the main bone next to my ankle.
Mm.
So it was vicious. It was.
I'd say so.
It was a hard hit. I hit everything out there, but the pace car at some point in time when I was racing, and but that was vicious. And I ended up selling the car, and luckily enough, that got me into positions that I was able to get into to do the other stuff that I'm really proud of, to be honest with you.
That's right.
So Terry, talk about the race directing stuff. Did you have a favorite class that you like to talk about on the radio? Did you prefer the rookies? Did you like watching the veterans? Or tell us about that race director experience for you.
The race director deal came out of the clear blue for me, but I enjoyed it. I think one thing I enjoyed a lot about it is, like you said, one thing I got to set up real high so I could really see what was going on and watch things and said, I wish I'd have done that. That's how he does that. No wonder he's so damn fast.
Right.
But to be honest, I enjoyed watching the veterans come in. The rookies were a lot of fun because the guys that come in, especially in San Antonio, and I know a lot of guys that were badass in Austin and at Pan American Speedway. They got on that half mile, and buddy, they were toast.
Yeah,
they could not do it. And I had a lot of them say, "This deal ain't for me." I don't mind racing in that little tight deal, but you get out here where they're going this fast, no. And so I enjoyed both of them. The rookies, I enjoyed watching them because it was fun to hear them afterwards. To go down and I was always somebody that would go down and thank as many people as I can for coming to the races, coming to the track and supporting us, and going down and talking to some of the new guys come in and say, "Well, what do you think?" Oh man, some of them would be shaking, but they were saying how fun it was. And I said, and I think to myself, well, we'll see how fun it was if you come back.
That's right. That's right. And that always was a big thing. I know for my dad and I, because we would see the Austin guys and they wouldn't go to San Antonio, and kind of vice versa. That was a big difference right there with the drastic differences right there. But Terry, I want to ask you about the days at Thunder Hill. Because when San Antonio went away, and we all know the story there with USRA, with Robert and all of that. I mean, that we don't need to dig all that up. But when that goes away, you've got a lot of guys that are used to being at that big track. They've got nowhere else to go. They got to take their stuff to Kyle, and they showed up, and then you get thrust into the race directing spot there with Marianne. Talk about those days, because that really became a glorified good time right there on Saturday nights in Kyle, once everything finally came together and everyone made the transition.
Yes, it did. And, I got to thank Marianne and Brian Calloway. Brian was the first one that came to me and asked me if I'd come up there and be the race director. and then I kind of stayed on when Mary Ann was there. But you're right. When the guys from San Antonio finally said, "Okay, guys, we're going to have all of us," I've said it 100 times, and I know you know it, Rodney and Bobby, for what you've raced. Racing is worse than drugs will ever be to somebody.
Yeah, it sure is.
So I have said it over and over and over, man. The adrenaline that you get from racing a car is like nothing else, as far as I'm concerned. And when those guys started coming up there, and we started getting everybody, more and more people, and started trying to get back to some newer type cars and stuff. The track came alive, man. That Thunder Hill came alive, and it was so much fun to watch. The track was unique in that it had that dog leg on the front stretch.
Yep.
And from what I understand, talking to Brian and I'm trying to think of what his partner name was at the beginning.
James
That's
Lynch.
not the way that track – I'm sorry?
James Lynch, yeah.
Yeah, James Lynch. That was not the way that track was supposed to be. That the guys that dug the track out misinterpreted what they wanted.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yeah. The track was supposed to be a true oval.
Huh.
And the guys that dug it and did all the stuff on it, when they all got it all done, they said, no, this is, oh, well, hey, man, this ought to be cool. Let's do it like this. And it turned out to be a hell of a racetrack. For being a small track,
yeah.
It turned out to be a hell of a track, and a lot of guys loved it. Romco, the guys at Romco, the only track that I say, and it blew my mind, that they loved going to more than they did Kyle, believe it or not, was Corpus.
Man.
They loved that little bull ring down in Corpus.
That was a beauty.
But the racetrack at Kyle was it was a lot of fun. Mary Ann did one hell of a job. I think she is one of the best promoters that anybody has ever seen running that could take care of a racetrack and do what she did and have the heart to do it. I don't know where she gets it from, man. I really don't, except from her dad.
Yeah.
Where she gets the passion to do what she does, and what she did at Thunder Hill. What everybody did, Rodney, that was a hell of a group of people.
Yeah.
That we had working there.
Yeah.
And we'd have meetings after meetings. How can we improve?
Yeah.
Phone calls.
Too many.
Phone calls. Every Tuesday night we had conference calls on what to do and everything. And it was just a lot of fun, a lot of good car counts, a lot of good racers up there.
Yeah.
That was another racetrack. I think the one thing that San Antonio took to Kyle at the time, so a lot of the drivers that went to Kyle, they took a lot of respect down to Kyle, because at San Antonio, you learn to respect your competitor. You can fight them afterwards like we did at Pan American.
Sure.
But on the racetrack, you touch one of them, you're going to hurt somebody.
That's right.
And I think a lot of that went with us to Kyle. I know it did with me, because as a race director, you don't want to see cars tore up. The fans do, but we don't. Us racers don't.
Yeah, that's right. Terry, I want to ask you before I cut you loose. I mean, obviously with the state of things now, and, I know when we lost CTS, you were one of the first ones that we were on the call trying to figure out a way to make something happen, but it wasn't in the cards. But, your thoughts on all of that. I was talking with Owen Pittman a couple of weeks ago, which he does massive work and just everything that he does operating 2 dirt tracks. But I really think we keep talking about Corpus. Corpus always had such a really strong hold on racing, on pavement racing in the state of Texas. With CC Speedway, they would operate a dirt track at the same time. There was a lot of that was happening. Your thoughts on all of that right now? It's a damn shame that we, we don't have a constant, and it kills us. Your thoughts on how it's just kind of fallen away? Just another sad story.
Well, Rodney, unfortunately, as I look at CC, the people, Owen, I raced, we had Ronco when Owen was running the racetrack, and Owen, hey, man, I guarantee you, next to Mary Ann, I think Owen Pittman, I'm serious, I think that Owen Pittman has got it going on. I really do. He knows his stuff. He knows the thing that with Marianne and Owen, and I'll get back to you about CC in a second, is they know how to take care of the racers.
That's right.
They worry about the racers, and that means a lot. Now with CC Speedway, my honest opinion is money took that deal over.
Mm-hmm.
They needed the racetrack. I don't know the financial situation of it, but I know that track could be successful if it's the oldest racetrack in Texas. Everybody loves that racetrack. They put on a hell of a show with everything they do down there. It doesn't make any difference what class of cars it is. Romco went down there. We went down there, and we used to run 125 lap races. We went 68 laps, green flag laps, before we had our first yellow one night down there, and I was wore out.
Yeah.
I was wore out them 68 laps calling that deal. But that racetrack was so fun. But somebody came in, and just my opinion, they said, we need to lease this thing to put our equipment here while we build this bridge. And somebody bought it. Said, hey, man, this is easy money. I don't have to worry about leasing this place. I don't have to do this. I don't have to worry about, I know what I'm going to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's what happened to Kyle, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That
one of the things.
one lawsuit stepped in.
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, we've had enough."
I'm
and
done.
Then we had somebody that was going to be quote unquote the savior of it. He pulls out.
Yeah.
And we won't go into that, but he pulls out of it, and then even though we all tried to step up. And there was a lot of us that tried to walk into that place and lease it.
Mm-hmm.
But he already had somebody that wanted to do what they're doing right now at it. And that's where the money took over. And that's unfortunately, I think, is what's causing a lot, not just here in Texas, but what's causing a lot of people across the United States to get rid of the racetracks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The almighty dollar.
That's right. That's right.
So
and not enough of us have the almighty dollar to step in and say, no, this ain't going to happen. I'll buy the property and keep it what it is.
That's right.
So, Terry, do you get to go to the racetrack much anymore? Do you head down to I-37? Are you just retired now from race directing? It's one of those addicting things. The second you go back to racetrack, you want to sit up top and take over?
Well, last year, and Rodney, you know this, last year I was invited to go to Houston and again try to possibly become, or had the deal made to become the race director at Houston. And something else stepped in. I won't go into it, but something else stepped in and changed that plan. But to go to the dirt track, I raced dirt twice, tore a car up both times, so dirt racing was out for me. And it don't make sense to me for the car to go sideways in the back end.
You and me both, my friend.
Every time that was happened, I needed to come in and get some adjustments. Or I had a flat tire.
It's not comfortable, Terry. I was never programmed to go sideways. That's right.
No, my cars never were designed to go sideways.
That's
they
right.
pushed a little bit, but I never wanted them loose. But no, answer to your question, Bobby, the last race I went to the Derby, but the last racetrack I went to try to work at was Houston. If somebody called, I'd listen. I'd listen to them. I would. I really would. If somebody called, I would listen. But to try to go out, just say, knock the door down and say, hey, I want to do this. No. No, my wife definitely likes the weekends off.
I bet she does.
I bet she does. See, Terry, the one thing about race directors, I don't think they get enough credit when things go right. They get all the bad press when it goes wrong. And I will tell you, I got to be race director one time. Gina asked me to go down and be race director at Mobile for one race when Mason couldn't do it. And I'm telling you, I about shit my pants when they came down for that first green flag. And it's like I've watched a million races. And I knew exactly what to do, but when they came down for that first green flag, did you get nervous on the starts, or was it one of those things that just became second nature to you after doing it? Because when that first green flag came, I was about to be done the first lap.
Well, to be honest with you, Bobby, I was tech inspector at San Antonio when Frank Howell bought the racetrack, and he had Ricky Ware as his race director and consultant. And the following year, I really don't know what happened. Frank just called me up and said, I need you to come into the office. You're going to be my race director. It wasn't, do you want the job?
Great.
You're going to be
Yeah.
race director. And I said, well, I've never done anything like this before. He said, well, you listen to Ricky enough on the radio. You're going to do it. And I said, okay. And I'll tell you what Ricky Ware told me. He said, you know, Terry, says when you're a tech inspector, you're a son of a bitch. He said, when you're race director, you're Mr. Son of a bitch, but you're still a son of a bitch. No matter what you're going to do, it ain't going to be right. And,
I love it.
and you're right. The first night that I was race director at San Antonio, I tried to remember everything. And for the whole year before that, or the off season, I went to the Snowball Derby. Most people go down there to watch them races. I got a scanner and I listened to the race director.
Mm-hmm.
And I visited Tech, and that's where I spent my whole weekend down there. I never listened to anything but the race director, and I thought, well, hell, this ain't so bad.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool.
Nothing to
This
it.
is pretty cool. This ain't pretty cool. Until, like you said, Bobby, when I walked in that back gate on opening night, and I was a race director, I was like, what in the hell were you thinking? Why don't you just get in the car and go home?
That's right.
You know, let him worry about this.
Yeah.
But it is it can be a very intimidating job.
Yeah.
It's one that I tried to when I went and worked the first race for Mary Ann at TSRS in Houston. Her first TSRS race, she asked me to come help her. And I went up there and I told her the first thing you got to learn in Romco at San Antonio Speedway, I knew everybody there.
Mm-hmm.
I knew all the drivers, but they don't have a name when you walk in there.
Yeah.
They all have car numbers.
It's a hard part.
When you're sitting upstairs, they have car numbers. They don't have names. They're not your friends. I disqualified some of my best friends.
Mm-hmm.
As a race director, I wouldn't let my brother drive
Yeah.
at San Antonio one night because he wasn't in the right frame of mind at the time.
Yeah.
And that was one of the hardest things you got to do. I mean, I've had a lot of family. I've lost friends doing it, but I gained a lot of friends, and I think, at least I like to think I did, I've gained a lot of respect from it.
You have. Yep.
From a lot of people. And fortunately enough, it led me with Robert Mullins and Ronco to be able to go to Texas Motor Speedway, meet Eddie Gossage, sit in on meetings with him. I mean, it in the long run, Bobby, if you'll stick with it, it's worth it.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I don't know. She only asked me to do it once, so I don't know if she wants me to do it again or not. So.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And Terry, seriously, you're one of the best that's ever done it. I mean, you're one of those guys. I mean, thank you for everything that you have done. And like I said, when the CTS thing went in the shitter, I think you were the first person that called me. And I'll tell you, Terry, I cannot wait to see you at the racetrack the next time because I don't think you're done, my man. I don't think you're done just quite yet.
Well, I mean, I'm I haven't retired from work yet, so I'm like I told Trey Ware asked me one time, would I ever get back in a race car? And I told him I never say never.
That's right.
I'll never
exactly
say I'll
right.
never do it.
Yep.
I'll never say never.
Yep. Never say the R word. Never say the R word. That's right. That's
nope.
right.
It's not in my vocabulary.
That's right. Terry, we got to do this again soon. We got to do part 2. We got to do part 2 coming up at some point. Thanks for taking time this evening, and like we said, happy belated birthday. I hope this this
thank
was
you.
cool to recount some stories. That's what it's all about.
Well, thank you. I'd love to do it again. Y'all just give me the word, and I'll be here.
Absolutely. Thanks, Terry.
And if there's any openings out there, give me a call, guys. I'll listen.
There he is. He's ready to go.
There it is.
He's ready to go. Absolutely.
Hell, you got me pumped, Rodney.
You'll be the first call. You will be the first call, my man. I promise you that.
All right, buddy.
All right, man.
Hey, y'all have a good evening.
You bet. Thanks, Terry.
See you, Terry.
All right, buddy.
You bet.
See you later, Bobby.
You bet.
Bye-bye.
There he is, Terry Barden. It's so funny with these guys, and that's the cool part about doing this show. It's because these guys. I mean, it was funny with Terry because it was when CTS closed. I mean, I had all these people reaching out. It's like, how are we going to rent this? I'm like, I ain't got no money. I know what that used to cost, and I ain't doing anything. But Terry called me, and he's like, here's my plan. And I'm like, dude, that is a very good plan. Mm-hmm. So, man, I just love that. I just love that. And, apologies to his wife and family that we're getting him fired up to do this once again. But that's what it's all about. And Terry, I remember when he had that wreck at SAS or SAR or 16, whatever you want to call it, man. That right there. My buddy Mike Cullen hit one of those things one of those tires that Terry was talking about, and that thing right there should have shredded a person. But I mean, think about that. Mm-hmm. You're going down into turn 3, and you are on the brake, and you stop that quick. That shit is horrible.
It definitely tore up some cars. It ate its fair share of cars for sure. She unforgiving and unbelievably fast. That's the one thing and everybody has a different way of talking about San Antonio, but the fastest way to get around. The Diamond has probably been the most popular response we've got. Mm-hmm. That's like the Brandon Bentley line was kind of a Diamond type of line. So yeah. I guess that was you clipped even when he was describing it, I saw you kind of nodding your head a little bit that was the fast way around there, kind of diming it. So
yeah, I've got a picture up in the studio, and it actually is one of my cars, and it's at the peak where I'm trying to go up because it really was. It was always so weird for me because people would tell me the same thing that he was just talking about, that Terry was talking about, to where you dove into the corner and you wanted to hit the grass on the inside, mm-hmm. and then try to drive the thing up and hit the grass on the outside coming out. But for everyone that actually raced at that racetrack, the banking there was unbelievable. And to try to get a car, especially in a stock car, in a super stock or a street stock, to turn that way, that was so hard. But that's the thing there with Terry. He was, I think Terry was a great racer. I mean, he did a lot of good things, but Terry's one of those guys where everything that he did, it came maybe outside of the race car with you got to think about that with the Romco days, and you were so entrenched in that. I talk about that, Bobby, because it really was like he was talking about right there. I think folks that don't realize Romco, USRA, all of that, man, that was so structured way back then. And I mean, you guys did such great work with that program back in those days.
Well, it just became
and it was behind the scenes. It was behind the scenes.
Terry was involved in all aspects of it. In terms of trying to get stuff, occasionally he butted head with people.
Sure,
butted heads with me,
as you should,
more than a couple of times. But I think
I do want to say that Bobby mentioned to me yesterday. Sorry to interrupt you all the time, but so Bobby mentioned to me when I mentioned that Terry was going to come on, he was like, "Man, he and I were not on the best terms at various points," and I'm like, I have interviewed people on this show that I wrecked them or they wrecked me and I hated them or we were going to fight, whatever the case was. I'm like, bygones are going to be bygones. and I mean, it just happens. And that's the beauty of doing this is it's like, it's all cool. It's all cool.
No, it's 15 years. No, probably more than that now. Let's see, 05.
You ain't that young, my man.
Yeah,
it's longer than that.
Long time ago. Water under the bridge. But, he's DQ'd us both. He's thrown my ass off the racetrack in the high five time or two.
Thrown off. Yeah, by him. And that's the thing, when it comes to that job right there, I mean, both of those, I mean, he has held the worst jobs. I mean, a race director or a tech guy. And we've talked to Jack. I mean, like Jack Sandifer, and that's one that's the ultimate one that we have to talk to.
He won't do it. We've asked him forever, and he still won't do it.
He will not do it. I mean, that's a guy. He will throw anybody out. He would throw Keith out. He would throw his brothers out if they were racing. I mean, because he was still is so by the book. And no matter how you think, like with Jack, it's like, you know what he's coming for. Mm-hmm. You know what he's coming for. And you still manage to screw that up. I mean, I remember back in our days, it's like, okay, we know what he's looking for. And I know all of you know what he's looking for. But man, we still managed to mess it up because he'd stick that thing in there and it wouldn't fit. That's what she said. And
you thought
he
that
still
one,
get you.
You thought that one nut was not going to be in the way.
He
It was not going to get hit by the roller.
He would still get you. And it was, I mean, the whole thing is he got me one time for with his wheel, with Jack's wheel.
The wheel hit a little piece of a body panel. You were done.
He hit me. He hit me on a screw that had fallen out of the body for. I'm not sure what that screw was actually doing in there. I'm not sure why it was there. That's probably why he figured that something wasn't right. But and he gets you because it wouldn't roll under there. And the rule was it had to roll under there. And I mean that's the bottom line. But those two jobs, I mean, the race director and the tech guy. I mean, we get. I mean, each and every race that I go to, there's usually somebody that's pissed off about something that I say. Whether it be over Race on Texas or Racing America or wherever it is, or a live call over the PA, somebody finds something that's wrong with that. But that is nothing compared to what you're going to get. And you got to deal with our man Dave Mater.
Yeah. Yeah, he was my first challenge as a race director.
Yeah.
He's like, is that a yes or no? That's a yes.
Yeah.
When the green flag drops, it's on.
Yeah.
But what if I do this when I don't care. You don't play games with the flag man. When the green flag drops, it's on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And believe me, and when the green flag dropped, his ass was on.
Yeah. And that's the way that's the way that it was. I mean, these guys are so programmed to get out there and race and do what they're, accustomed to doing. And racing has evolved and everything changes up. And yes, we're looking for Gabe Brown. If he doesn't show up, that's okay because we've got plenty to talk about. But it is so hard because the sport evolves, and that's where it's so different. I remember back in the day, where it was the flagman's call to be the race director. I mean, the flagman called the yellow. And that's where we see it, where it's so different right now, because you have flagmen and you have race directors kind of butt heads a little bit, where it's like, okay, who's in charge? And the flagman sees something and it's like, boom, yellow. And the race director's like, no. I mean, I've heard it. Mm-hmm. The race director's like, why are you throwing that yellow? But it's
David did save me in Mobile that one time, because the way that it works is like you and I, when you announce all the time, because you don't know if there's going to be a caution. When you see contact down in turn one, you're so used to saying trouble, turn one. Right. When you're the race director, you have to look at it and not say trouble, turn one. You got to say caution, turn one, or keep it green or whatever. And I was like, I called on the radio, trouble, turn one. And then Dave was like, do you want to go caution? Caution? Yeah. Let's go. That's a hell of a good idea.
Is that what you said?
I was like,
yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Put it out. And he'd already started putting it out when he was like, and I didn't get, he thought I was going to be mad at him. I'm like, shh. I was like, hell no, you saved my ass on that call.
Well, and I think that's where it's so important still, even in these days. I mean, you get great flagmen like that, like David Corbello that you're talking about right there. And I mean, Nathan's a good flagman. I mean, there are great flag guys all around the country. And that is so much of it, because those are the eyes on the racetrack. I mean, you can see stuff, and what I don't like is that these days you get everybody has a radio and the chatter. I mean, everybody's like, so what'd you see? What'd you see? What'd you see? What'd you see? Somebody make a call. I mean, somebody. You're in turn two. You were looking right at it. What happened?
Yeah, what'd you see?
Yeah, and that's where it gets so hard, to where I think sometimes thin it out. I mean, thin it out. Put somebody in every corner and let them make those calls, but it's a lot to follow. It's a lot to follow, and it happens so damn fast.
It does.
And I know a lot of times, I mean, I've heard it at tracks all around the state, all around the country, to where you get on there and something happens, and it's like you're spending 10 minutes under a caution trying to figure out what the hell happened. And it's like the one person that saw it, just tell me. Just tell me.
They don't want to be
Nobody knows who you are.
The bad guy.
Right.
You know, because maybe it's their buddy, whatever the case may be. Like Terry said, once you get in the tower, they're not friends. I mean, and we both gotten into it before, where we've said something about somebody wrecking somebody else, and it's like, look, man, we just called it like we saw it. You took that dude out. Like, it was that simple.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, and that's a hard part. I mean, that's where, I mean, everybody wears their feelings right here, right now. And that's the hard part. And speaking of that, I do want to ask you. So Ross Chastain, this is a guy that we watch him, and he is about to embark in a playoff run where he is not making friends. And this relates to this. I know we don't talk a lot of cup racing on here, but this relates to weekly dirt track racing, to asphalt racing. This dude is not making friends, and he's pissing people off, and he's about to piss himself a cup championship away because they're going to come get him when it comes down to it, because he's just the whole I've got to get better. I've got to do this. I tweeted this out yesterday. I've got to do better. Dude, bullshit. Come on,
you said
man.
it once. That's fine. When you said it the first time, I got to do better. And he's right. The problem is he's put himself in a position that he's never been in before, where he's got the equipment that's running up front.
Right.
Where he's a consistent guy that runs in the top. He didn't go from running in the top 20 to the top 15 to the top 10 to the top 5s. He went from running 25th on back to now being in equipment that is top 10 equipment.
Right.
And he's not used to that.
Right.
Regardless what he says, he's not used to that. And I think the challenge for him is, one, to just not run over anybody. I think that I'm surprised that Denny Hamlin didn't get more grief from NASCAR for the incident there in St. Louis. But I also think that it's becoming a challenge for Ross Chastain because he's not making any friends, and he's got an opportunity to be a championship contender, but he's rubbing people the wrong way, and that's not good because, like you said, you got to have a few friends out there when you're trying to go for a championship.
And that's really the one thing that I keep seeing, because it's like the list keeps growing. I mean, Denny again. I mean, Truex again, and part of that was Truex. I mean, that was what it was. But man, it's you're not doing yourself any favors here with all of this, because you. And then to kind of play it off. I mean, people get tired of the whole Gilligan thing. We're like, oh, shucks. You know, that's the one thing that I appreciate about Joey Logano. When he gets out there and plants somebody, he's like, yeah.
I did it.
Yeah. And that's where
he's aggressive, and he knows it.
And he does not play this thing down. And that's, you know, with Kyle Busch, I mean, he's another guy. But and we see this on the short track side, to where you have guys that you're going to race with, and you know what they're going to do, and you got to be ready for it. And I don't know. I think Chastain, at some point, he's going to pay the ultimate price. And what I really hope for his camp is that he doesn't act surprised and have that stupid look on his face when they put him in the fence, when they knock him out of the playoffs. And it's because it's a list of people. I mean, it's like boom, 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 adding. And you short track racers need to think of that too when you're doing this stuff, because you never forget. No,
you remember the guys that rubbed you the wrong way.
Yeah, that's right. So,
and it doesn't matter what class you're in, you remember.
Yeah.
Years later, you'll remember that shit.
Mm-hmm. You never forget. And you get them when they least expect it. I've done it when they never thought it was coming. You may be getting lapped, and it's like, oops.
Yeah, oops. I didn't see you coming, yeah.
My brakes failed. But anyway, so we talked earlier, I think Alan's talking there on the Facebook thing about the big Arklatex. That is going to be a massive show. 5K to win for the factory stocks, 5K to win for the limited modifieds. That's going to be fun. You're getting the best from Texas, from Arkansas, from Louisiana. That's going to be really cool. But Bobby, I have got to tell you, my man, I'm so excited for tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be a lot of fun. I cannot wait to watch some Northerners racing tomorrow on a Tuesday night. For crying out loud. That's going to be fun.
Arklatex is good, but they don't have the best website up and running, unless I'm looking at the wrong one.
Be better, guys. You've got to fix your website. Right? That's your storefront. Look bad?
There's nothing on it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not good.
I mean, maybe it's going to be on Facebook because all the information for the race. But I mean, I get that you got to put some of your stuff on social media, but you got to have a decent website.
Mm-hmm.
Google goes to the website. Social media goes to social media.
That's right. That's right. Slinger Nationals tomorrow on a Tuesday night in Wisconsin. And that's the funny thing where we talked to Terry right there, and we've talked about the plight of Texas racing and all of this. We can't figure out a way to have a Texas asphalt track, but we're going to the Slinger Nationals on a Tuesday night. And you've got a who's who that's going to be showing up for the super late model race. And that, man, that makes me jealous. Very jealous, my friend. 43rd annual Slinger Nationals, and you've got guys like Luke Fenhouse, Casey Johnson, Johnny Sauter. You got Johnny D, John DeAngelis. Oh, by the way, a guy named Matt Kenseth, Bubba Pollard, all of these guys. Ty Majeski, Stephen Nasse. You want to be pissed off if you're a Texas race fan? They're racing on a Tuesday night.
And it'll be completely full grandstands and a completely full field.
Yeah. Strange. 43rd annual Slinger Nationals. That's going to be fun to watch. I'm looking forward to that.
It's going to be a good one. They've already got they did the draw and stuff for the qualifying order tomorrow. Derek Thorne's in that race, so he's another one to watch. That his aggressive driving style
from the left coast.
His aggressive driving style from the SRL stuff will be very interesting to see. I mean, it's tight quarters, and there's going to be a little rooting and gouging and beating and banging.
Yeah. I thought it was really cool to see this past weekend on the asphalt side with the race at New Smyrna with the Southern Super Series. How about the local? How about Brad May putting it on him? He lapped the point leader. The point leader in the Southern Super Series. Great run. I know they had weather issues and all that. And I had folks messaging me and talking about, well, that was a snooze fest. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? A snooze fest won by the local guy. Boom. That's what you want right there. Beat the big dogs. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
And that's what he did. I mean, when you have somebody with the local knowledge that May's got of New Smyrna, I mean, it became very, very evident very fast that he was going to be the one that they were going to have to beat.
That's right. He wins at Speed Weeks all the time, but he wins his first Southern Super Series racer over Matt Craig, Jet Nolan, Jake Garcia, and Bubba Pollard, and Nasse got disqualified.
Again?
Yeah. Well,
back-to-back DQs?
Back-to-back, and that hurt him in the points as now he's trailing, and that hurts him just a little bit, but that'll be fun. Looking forward to Slinger and the Oxford 250. Those are great marquee events.
Yeah, Amazon Prime Day the next couple of days. Are you going to go wild and buy a bunch of stuff you don't need?
Nope. I ain't going there. I actually threw away a mixer yesterday, my friend.
What?
Mm-hmm. One of the channels didn't work. I got rid of something.
Damn.
What you gonna buy?
Maybe a TV for my man cave.
Oh, damn. I thought you had one in there.
I want a bigger one.
That's what she said. Oh, my God.
And she don't listen to the show, so she's not going to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's good. When is that? Amazon?
Tomorrow and Wednesday.
Oh, shit. Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see what comes about. But I really like that conversation there with Terry Barden. And that's one of the guys, that we talk about with everything that Terry did. A lot of his contributions, I mean, he had a good racing career. I mean, talking about the days with Pan American and everything, but his impact was after the fact. He came in and did the tech stuff and race directing. Man, that's the thankless jobs, my friend.
Yeah, the race directing stuff is very, very underrated. You don't get credit for it when the races go right, but you get credit for it when the races go wrong.
Yeah, when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
They come find you. Come find you. And you have to, be escorted out.
Yeah.
Hide in the back seat.
That's right. Hide under the back of the truck cover to get the hell out of there.
That's right. Great Revved Up Sports Show. Catch all the archives at RevvedUpSportsShow.com as well as SoundCloud, no matter where.
Don't forget to like the YouTube page.
That's right. Like that one. Spreaker, iTunes, everywhere. You can get all of this great content. It's going to be fun tomorrow. Slinger Slinger Nationals. Find a local short track. I hope we don't get any more rainouts because of heat. Jeez.
Hey, what is today? Today the 11th?
7-Eleven.
Yeah, free Slurpees today.
7-Eleven, go. Hopefully the Slurpees haven't frozen up. He's Bobby. I'm Rodney. We are back next Monday. # Real Race Talk from Texas. It is the Revved Up Sports Show.